Emotional control, self-compassion, spirituality, and true animal nature are only some of the topics discussed in this week's live link deep dive, but it's also going to be discussed today. The challenges we are presented with by the words are only intensifying. Stay the course, fellow humans. Together, we are always stronger and better off than alone. Obviously, this was written on a Sunday because of it. And let me ask you this question, David. What I just read, does that replace the old Sunday read?
In a way, it does. Yeah. I mean, things evolve, and it's kind of inadvertent, and it wasn't intended to. You're supposed to be
But
a sum up of it.
sometimes things happen in life that aren't intended to be, and we just have to figure out if they work into the
That's right. Yes, exactly, exactly. So basically, that's what's happened. It's 5 links deep every Sunday. It comes out, through my Twitter newsletter, and it has
which will be a good segue to back to directly quoting you.
Okay.
Control your life, manage
Yes.
your emotions, change your future. Being intentional in our business, our decisions, and our relationships is not easy. There is a fine balance in trusting, another favorite David Amerland word, your own judgment and second guessing yourself to the point that you can't get anything done because you suspect the motivation of your own actions. And I will tell who is ever watching this that we are so fortunate to be having a discussion today with David, the superhero.
I so wish I really do sometimes.
David, the superhero. And I should also point out that in the last 7 years, I have been referenced as David number 2, with David number 1 being our guest today, my friend today, my friend every day, because it's intended to be.
Absolutely. And I agree. I mean, I know these connections appear to be, business-like and professional, but at the end of the day, if I don't find a lot of synergy in the values you project, in the way you think, in the things which you do in the world, I would be unwilling to be here.
Okay, so my first question, of all the things that jumped out at me as I started to read your book, what jumped out at me, actually the very first that really
tell me. I'm dying to hear.
You will never guess what it is. You will never guess what it is, but you made reference to your mother and father, and that jumped off the page to me. And I said, I've never heard David reference his mother and father before. How very interesting that it's happening in this book. The other thing that I noticed very quickly that it brought a big smile to my face was that in your acknowledgments, and I even read your acknowledgments, I saw the name Zara Altair. Well, I had read that 24 hours before I was doing a 1-hour recording with Zara. And I congratulated her. I said, you being acknowledged in David Amerland's book. And you know what her response was? Her response was, I haven't gotten my copy of the book yet. I don't know. And so I was giving her some new information. How neat was that I was sharing some information with her. David, your last 3 books, help me out here. You and I have discussed a lot of books.
Actually, yes.
We've discussed and we've gone through a lot of different things. And I will have to say in all honesty that since 2000, the last 7-8 years, I have read more David Amerland than anything that I've ever read, by one author. So it's been a wonderful
compliment, and thank you for that.
It's been a wonderful journey for me, obviously, because I'm still here doing it. And I was just thinking about, was there any way as you started to do your research well, for intentional and the sniper mind. Okay, and you actually dealt with that. I was kind of surprised you dealt with that in this book. You have a page praise for the sniper mind. I was wondering, did they start out in the eye of your mind at the same time, and you
Well,
kind of,
one led into another. So, I mean, the Sniper Mine was a standalone book, but there was a lot of research which I came across, a lot more than I actually anticipated. And as I finished that book, there was a lot of research which I hadn't addressed, or I hadn't covered, or hadn't used, and some avenues I hadn't explored, in the ways that we can actually take some of the lessons of the Sniper Mind, which is more business focused, and apply them to us individually. Because at the end of the day, if we're the foundation of everything we do, we're the foundation of everything that happens. If we're not okay, then whatever we do, whatever happens, whatever outcomes we actually generate are not going to be okay. So I wanted to take that research, modulate it, put it into manageable chunks and say, hey, we all struggle with these things. We all struggle with motivation. We struggle with self-knowledge, self-discovery. We struggle with our ability to manage our emotions. We struggle with the ability to organize our thoughts. We all want to be happy. And these are all things addressed in the book itself. And I wanted to sort of say, okay, if we all struggle with these things, where do they come from? How are they generated? What does science tell us about them and about us? And if we understand something about them and us, then can we not work a little bit smarter, manage things a little bit better, and attain the things which we need in a slightly easier way?
I just started to put the books side by side because to me there seemed to be some similarities, some similar thinking, some foundational work. When you and I discussed the sniper mind, the absolute first thing that came to my mind is, and we talked about it, is the sniper mind pretty much the same as the entrepreneurial mindset, and we agreed that it was. And I was then wondering as I've read this because you can't believe what is going through me as I'm reading things. I'm saying, who's saying that? Is David saying that, or is David number one saying that, or is David number two saying that? I mean, there's
That's
that.
brilliant. I think that's really cool.
It
Thank
is
you.
so wonderful, and it's a great place for me to be in life, to be able to go back and because you have gone through a lot of, in my mind, uh, you've gone through different phases, and it is what it is. It's you. It's where your head is at that particular point in time, what it is that you want to focus. But the thing that I've enjoyed, I think most, when you get thoughts, you want to put quill in on paper to tell them, or you probably do more keyboarding than you do with a quill pen, but
Same thing, though.
it says paper. You want to tell a story through your words, and nobody does it better. Nobody does it better than you do. Well, I love to tell stories, as you well know, but I like to do videos with them. I did my thing with the book. It was the most exciting thing. I spent 100 days writing a book. Well, I've told you this story,
Yes, you
and
have. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's
and
an amazing journey, right?
well, amazing, because you know how much time you spend in your research. And I started to say I was kind of curious, as I put the books side by side, were there shared bibliographies between the two books where you were using the source again, because it gave you
I
something to think about?
some bibliography was shared, but some studies used in the first book, in the Sniper Mind, were then used as a springboard to take me further. And it's telling that although intentional is almost half the size of Sniper Mind, the amount of research that has gone into both books is about the same. And it took about the same length of time for me to research them and write them. So there's a lot of condensation that goes on into um, intentional by design. I decided that each chapter had to work, or it hadn't, it couldn't. So if it didn't, then it didn't matter how long the chapter was.
Well, and you're doing things differently today than you did when I first met you. And we
Hmm.
grow, and we
We evolve, absolutely.
we evolve,
Yeah,
and we do
yeah,
what we think is the best to do.
yeah.
Um, and but I've noticed you've done a really wonderful thing, and we've talked a little bit about it on LinkedIn with your very short 5 minute, 6 minute messages, and you're now telling this story in those messages. That's a wonderful supplement,
Yes. Yeah.
a
I'm
wonderful way
sort
to
of,
do it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think
Well,
that, you know,
I have a special gift for you at the end of this
okay.
discussion.
Okay.
I got an epiphany at 2 o'clock my time this morning, 10 o'clock your time. And I acted on that epiphany, and I'm going to share it with you at the end
Okay,
of
that
our
sounds cool.
discussion.
I'm intrigued. Okay, thank you. See, you hooked me straight away. Classic
So,
storyteller.
so you did something here, which you were thinking of me because I need a page like this. How to use this book. I mean, how amazing. So rather than me quote from this, why don't we let the author tell us how to use the book?
Absolutely. And, it sounds funny because you're asking people to sort of read, how do I use a book? And, everybody knows you open up a book, you start reading it, and you start thinking and actioning, right? But essentially, a book by its format can be constraining. You think, okay, it's X number of words, X number of pages. I need to start from the beginning and go to the end. And that in itself can be constraining. And the way the book has been written, it's intended to be used in any way you like. You can open up the last chapter, start reading it, go through it, think about it, and use the tools at the end of the chapter to actually work on yourself. And the last chapter is on happiness, by the way. So we can all start with happiness in our lives.
Well, what you just said segues into my very next question and concern. Absolutely, what I was thinking I wanted to do, and the way that I typically read a book like this. Uh, I get into some of the introductory things, but I go right to the index because I get an idea of what's in the book for sure, and then I've got the master of search engine optimization and keywords, and they're right here in the index, and so I go to the index to see it. I was having such a great time going through your index to see what your keywords were. Okay, I'll give you a little test.
Okay.
And I only got through C in the alphabet. I was so
and there's a whole lot of other letters as well.
I got ABC, which is it's only a couple pages, but that's all the further I got. In A, the thing that the key word is actions. That was obviously just by the number of actions no, I take that back. Number one, a B keyword was brain. Brain was probably your number one. Well,
yes.
It's brain.
Without a brain, we can't do anything. Yeah, so we need that. It's key.
and the challenge is that I only use half my brain. I've been accused of only using half my brain. And I did something else for the first time today, Dave, I've never done. I went to your Facebook page. I had never, as long as you and I have known each other, I had never went to your Facebook page today. Now, when I went today, what did I see? I saw a brain, two sides, one gray and one colored. I said, well, David knows that. He knows I don't work with half a brain. So it was so beautiful.
Thank you for that. And most of the times, I actually feel I'm working with half a brain. I could do with two brains. That would be really good.
Right.
We need to crack that.
With half a brain, we're in real danger. The knowledge that's going to spew forward if you're only working with half a brain. Oh gosh. Cognition, big word. Well, that's how I read a book regularly. I go and
it gives you a very good, actually, that approach. And a lot of people don't actually get this, but if you do that, it gives you almost a 30,000 view perspective of a book. Right?
Well, I haven't made the decision yet, but I have a lot of discussions with Barbara Weltman, and she every year publishes a 700-page book, and you have to go to her keyword index. Yes. Well, I do. It's about taxes and small business taxes, and I don't need 700 pages of that information. All great information. So her index tells me exactly.
And that's a great tip you just gave for information retrieval.
Well, I'm going to see how I feel after I've read your book and go to the key words to.
Okay.
But it's going to take me a year or two because right after you're going to come up with something else, and you're. But it's
Well,
all.
people tell me I write faster than they can read. So well, if it's possible, this time next year I'll have another book out. We don't know yet.
And I love. I think I've read it before, but I think you reference yourself as a neuroscientist, which you are.
Well,
Uh,
I'm not really. I mean, I'm a chemical engineer.
you're not certified, but you certainly are qualified.
I suppose, I mean, a lot of research, right now I've got like 6 years worth of research and writing into that field over 2 books. So I kind of begin to find my way through a very complex landscape. And it's really exciting because for the first time ever, we are actually beginning to see ourselves think and what effect that has. And the picture that's emerging is quite frightening, really. So a lot of the time, for many different evolutionary based reasons, our brain is designed to stop us from thinking too much. It's there to stop us from analyzing things too deeply. And in the long term, our history that has helped us survive during critical times and survive events, and here we are. But now we're at a complex point in our evolution and our history where we actually need the brain's ability to think, synthesize, connect the dots, and come out with inferential things. And we really need that. Biochemically, we're designed to avoid it. It's energetic, it costs us a lot of energy. The brain doesn't like it. But the moment we understand that constraint, then we can begin to act against it. We can begin to set things in place, which allows us to be more thoughtful, think more deeply. And we need that right now.
God only knows how much brain power we need now to get us through things. I mean, well, none of us have ever seen a period of time as we are seeing right now in our lifetime. It's kind of interesting because my young granddaughters are growing up with that mindset, with that attitude. Here I am, 70 years older, 65 years older than my grandchildren, and I'm, going back and seeing where things are, and actually, I'm able to contribute to my grandchildren's thinking, which is kind of interesting because we've all gone through 20. We all survived 2020. We all somehow survived 2020.
Just yes.
And probably I can say this about myself, and I'm sure you will confirm it with yourself. You were probably as productive in 2020 as any year in your life.
Well, yes and no. I mean, obviously, what is happening in the world, what has happened to this point in time, what we think will happen next, is exerting its own influence on us. It's making us anxious, it's making us more thoughtful, it's making us perhaps a little bit more introspective. That affects people in one of 2 ways. One is that you panic, you lose control of yourself and your situation, you self-medicate in whatever way or fashion or form will allow you to cope with this. Or you say, hey, I know it's hard and I know it's difficult and I know it's completely uncertain and there's no set outcome that I can guarantee 100% from where I stand, but I'm not going to just sit back and let things happen. And that tends to make those of us who make that decision a lot more productive, at least on the surface, because we are a lot more active.
That's one thing I wanted to. It's really hard to to pick out where we should jump. I want to jump in because you also do something with each one of your chapters.
Yeah, why don't you just open up in random and let's discuss that. And I would actually give us a good litmus test.
And I have every November, excuse me, every November, I have a discussion with Barbara Wellman about her new book. And this, what you are saying right now, that's what do I say? I just open it up, I see what it has to say, and we deal with it. Wow, here we go. One of my favorite words, David. Well, I wanted to point something else out too, because each one of your chapters are one word. And I had your chapter listing here somewhere. There it is. Life, identity, goals, motivations, behavior, beliefs, values, grit, grit. Wasn't it a newspaper that was published in Williamsburg, Pennsylvania, and they were only allowed to publish good news? They were not allowed. That's all they published. It's called Grit. Yeah, I want to so attitude, mindset, happiness. I happened to open a book up to values,
Okay.
and that is, you gotta have values.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I don't think there's a single person on the planet who would disagree with that. The question which then comes up from that is, whose values do you have and what values are they? And that is a gray area. And we can take this into any domain. You can take in the business domain, you can have capitalists and more socially minded business, and they both have values and they both are 100% behind them and they both are convinced that they're right. You can have the political arena, you can have Labor and Tories who are conservative, you can have conservatives and we're Republicans and Democrats, and they both have values and they both 100% behind them. So the moment you talk about values, you got to think, okay, where do they come from? How are they generated? How do we maintain them? How do we actually put them into practice in a way that helps us be better, create better societies, better communities, better businesses? And that question is not as easy to solve as you might think, but there is a way to solve it. There is a way to actually understand where values come from and how they're generated and how they're accepted. And part of it is cultural. We within the West, we have certain specific Western values, for instance, which are not evident in societies. It's not Western societies. So, some of them come from the behavior which we see in each other and reinforces itself. And some of them come from our own perception of the world and our place in it. And these are our personal set of values. So if, for instance, you have a very egalitarian streak in you, you've helped small businesses for a long time, you understand how businesses work and how the business world works, and you try to enable smaller people, smaller businesses, be better by actually tapping into that knowledge. That's one of your values. And you say, okay, who gave you that value? I mean, your parents surely did not set you aside and say, hey, listen, David, this is what you got to do with your life. Help small businesses become better. This is something you developed and you believe in. And because you believe in that, you do it to a much greater degree and with a lot more effectiveness than somebody who would just do it, let's say, just for money.
Well,
Or you hire somebody to do it.
I have said uh, one of my major themes in terms of small businesses, and now we're getting a great test of it because 2020 made everybody quiet, business for the most part, and then all of a sudden 50 million, they say 40 million, but I think it's closer to 50 million businesses attempted to reopen and start, but they were all starting from point zero. They were all coming out of the gate together. So theoretically, the business model could have changed, the way you deliver, the deliverability. But the major thing is people are not going to buy from you unless you bring value to their life, whatever that might be. And you and I,
value, and you're making a good point here, and a very important point. And value is not the same as values, because you can bring out a product which is incredibly valuable and that adds value to people's lives, but you could be the worst possible person on the planet. And initially this may work, but at some point this catches up with you. And I'll give you an example now, an active example. Activision Blizzard, they bring out video games and entertainment packages. They have a growth strategy and a business plan, and products are incredibly valuable, and they're absolutely solid. If we do a business projection analysis, they're a great company to invest in. They have good management structure. They have good packages for their employees, and they bring out great products that the public loves. Now, for the last 2, 3, or 4 months, I think now, they've been embroiled in a lawsuit brought on by some of their employees about sexual harassment at work. Now, this is values, right? It's nothing to do with the value they produce. But here's the thing. Some of the investment firms which had been recommending Activision Blizzard as a company to invest in have now withdrawn that support. And I think one of them actually published an article saying when good companies do bad things. Now, the good company thing is a reflection on the value of the company and what it does. But the bad things they've done is a reflection on their values, where they did not actively support or even entertain the notion of personal boundaries, and they didn't think that creating a culture which allowed people to feel safe in the workplace in terms of who they were sexually was important. And actually it is, and it's caught up with them. So now it's affecting their price share. It's affecting their place in the stock market. It's affecting the perception that investors have, which means that their ability to tap into money has decreased because of that. So we can see how the value which you bring to the marketplace, to other people's lives, is predicated upon your own values. So this is why values are so important at a personal basis.
Well,
If you don't hold good values,
the conflict arises when your values and my values don't match up. That's
well, exactly. And this is, I'm very glad you mentioned this, because this is exactly the question. I mean, values are such a broad set in general that some we can perhaps overlook and some will overlap. And then there are some which are core values. We both believe, for example, in the sanctity of life. I don't think you're going to get anybody on any planet, hopefully, when other planets are discovered, who will say, oh, it's okay to kill people, if you don't like them, or if they get in your way. We both believe that, playing by certain rules is something which we value. We both believe that having a sort of an egalitarian approach, which gives intrinsic value to your employees or intrinsic value to the people around you, even if they're not exactly like you, is something which is desirable. So these are the values which are core values, and they emerge across cultures, interestingly enough, and they emerge also across different individuals with different backgrounds, different upbringings, and different situations. And you got to say, well, where do the core values come from? And one way of determining how these core values are put together and where they come from is to examine how our brain actually works. And we'll come back to this energetic cost. So essentially, we are all fashioned the same way. We're all built the same way. My brain, your brain, anybody's brain. And the way the brain is fashioned and the way it connects things is designed to lead us to a way that makes life easier. So we don't have to struggle all the time. I mean, the struggle of life is really real, but we don't have to struggle necessarily. If I think, for example,
that on page 68, I think it was.
if I think, for example, at the moment I turn my back on you, you're going to literally stab me with a knife. Then, yeah, I know, but let's suppose, right, that I actually think that, then I can't relax around you, which affects everything we do, creates friction in everything we do, creates unnecessary obstacles. So we can't really, although we may think it's really good for me and you to work together, it's not really going to work out because I can't relax and you sense that, then you put up barriers and so on. And that predicates on that, belief of mine that you don't value human life, hence you don't value my life. But if we both believe that we both equally value human life, and we, no matter what disagreement we have, we're unlikely to, to try and kill each other, then that changes everything. It makes things a lot easier to deal with. And that's how values drive us. And we need to understand that. People often confuse, value and values, belief and values and beliefs is slightly different things. So there you go.
And that also melds into a discussion about trust, which we're not going to deal with today.
But absolutely. I mean, trust is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, we can have zero contact with any other person.
I wanted to bring out in your book, and we'll just have you do it live. Well, you have points to remember. Obviously, you just summarized those bullet points. You made it so simple to read and understand. You definitely were thinking about me on that one. Question time. You asked in chapter 7, you asked 3 questions. What are the universal values you perceive in practice? You've alluded to those. Are you aware of the way context changes your behavior and the values you apply? I think you just said that. And how do you plan your day so that it fits with the plan you have for your life, which goes into what is intended to be, and then what happens and we have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up now, because essentially, you're right. Every chapter finishes on a summary, which is a number of points.
You do it so well. You bring it home. We ask the questions. Well, how does that particular principle apply in my life? And you've done it.
And then that summary is finished with 3 questions in every chapter. And those 3 questions are basically the kind of questions a friend would ask you in a friendly environment that would help you turn a little bit more introspective about why you are, how you are. And that's the intention of the book at heart, really. It's supposed to be that friend which will say, hey, you are better than you think. You're better than you think you are. And here's how you can be better still. This is what you need to think about. This is what you need to ask yourself.
Well, you just kind of gave the top tip. Well, you did it in different words, but you essentially say, I'm going to read it just so we can compare. Examine your home and your office, identify what helps you work and live better and what makes it harder for you. It can be small things such as a door that always sticks, that's like my refrigerator, a lock that's hard to use, a light that flickers before it comes on. Fix these things to create less friction and make the effort required to get through each day way less. Wow, an effortless day. Wow.
That would be amazing, right? Exactly. I mean,
More
if you think
efficient
about
than
it,
the last
yeah.
one. You go, yes.
Well, if you think about it, essentially, here's what it is, right? The world is a construct. That construct has been created by us, people. So in theory, since it's our construct, it should work for us just like that. No effort involved. And we know from experience this is not the case. We know that everything which we do, even simple things, appear to be difficult. They take a lot of effort from us. They require a lot of work. They don't always give us the outcomes they're supposed to, and then we have to work extra hard to get something to work when it should work. And then you have to ask yourself, why? Why does it happen? And here's what I essentially say, that the world we experience is not really the world we have constructed. That world is a construct, sure. It's a construct of our actions, absolutely. But it's a construct that is an emergent construct, an emergent phenomenon, if you like. So basically, it is created by the sum total of the tiny little actions that we do on an everyday basis, and their actions around them, and the actions around them, which, every sort of layer creates an enabling effect, which simply either supports or amplifies what we do at the base level. So when you and I step out into the world and we try to do something, be it, perhaps find a car that is not too expensive, find a home that is suitable for us, but it's not going to cost us more money than we have, that generates friction. You think, well, why does it generate this friction? Why is the friction there? Well, the friction is there because the system isn't really designed for us, and we try to fit into it the way that we think we want to fit into it, not the way it thinks we need to fit into it. And that's what generates our friction. So if we find ways to get rid of that friction, lubricate it somehow, then life becomes easier. If it becomes easier, we become more productive. If we become more productive, we become more agreeable, better. We do things in a better way. We have time and energy to think. So all desirable things.
When we exercise, we know that we have to have resistance because
yes, exactly. Yes,
we don't have resistance, it doesn't work. However, when we bring resistance into our lives, I always try to look for options. I want to get a list of my options, and then I will inevitably pick the one of least resistance. It's just it's the way.
Yes, but we see. Here's the thing. I mean, and this is commendable what you said, right? But we are actually designed evolutionary to behave and operate in a way that actually looks for the path of least resistance. Left to our own devices entirely, we may all choose to do the easiest thing possible, which means that nothing would really get done to a very sort of agreeable extent. It takes effort for us to realize that, hey, we need to do things differently. And when do we do that? Well, we don't do it when we should, because if we did things when we shouldn't be having this conversation about climate change and CO2 levels today, because we were warned 25 years ago. So really, that's when we should have done something and we didn't. We come to today, we see these superstorms hitting the eastern coast of the United States. We see the temperatures rising across the globe everywhere. We see the global economy being threatened because communities are being displaced by climatic phenomena. We see that food production is threatened. We see all these things. And that now generates greater friction, which we need to solve. So now we're trying to do the things which we were supposed to do. So now we try to do the harder things, which should have done 25 years ago. Now, because the things ahead of us are even harder if we don't do anything. So now that we have two comparison points, we can actually begin to take the path of least resistance, but it's greater effort than before.
And the reason, David, bottom line reason that I'm having so much fun, and I'm talking about the business side of things of what I'm doing, I'm picking best practices of 50 years. And just because the only thing that has changed in 50 years is the technology. And
Yes, I agree. The only thing that's changed in the last 5,000 years is the technology.
Correct.
Human beings are the same. We have the same needs. We arguably have the exact same behavior. And we certainly have the same way of thinking on how to interface with each other and the world at large. We're governed by the same sort of dynamic shaped by thousands of years of evolution. The mechanics of our brain hasn't changed. Technology, however, as a layer, does what technology as a layer has always done. It amplifies our ability to do things better in a more efficient way with a greater sense of economy of effort. Classic case, this conversation we're having now. If we take this conversation 30 years ago and we have the exact same conversation in the exact same context, 30 years ago, we wouldn't have the technology to do this now. What would need to happen? You need to pick up a phone, a telephone, right? Not a cell phone. Find the area code for my area. So they have to ring the exchange and say, where, David lives in Greece. What's the area code for his area? Use my number, connect with me. So you have to call a house, hoping that I'm there when you want to talk to me. And when you actually get hold of me, you got to say, hey, listen, can we get together for half an hour? You need to arrange a flight. You need to come to my place. I need to come to your place. I mean, huge amounts of friction, cost, and effort, right? To do this. And now because we do this, it becomes easier, which means the exchange of information we enter into becomes easier. Our ability to think smarter becomes easier because we don't just think with our own brain. That's really ridiculously inadequate.
Well,
we think with each other's brains.
Technology brings another dynamic to play, a simple dynamic, but in terms of human beings, you start to build around it. And I mentioned this to Scott earlier today. The Scots in Seattle, I'm in the Midwest, Cincinnati, Ohio. What city in Greece do you live in? Not Athens.
I live outside Athens, a city called Patras.
Okay, so here we are, millions of miles apart, 3 different time zones, yet we have gathered in a technology to bring a message, to share a message.
Yeah, and technology makes borders. It's border agnostic. It's
border agnostic. Can I quote you on that?
Absolutely, you can. Yes, and it allows us to connect irrespective of the time. It allows us to connect at a very low cost, and that enables us to do these things. Which means that essentially through the connection, I get smarter because I listen to you. I tap into your knowledge. You get smarter from me, and whoever listens to both you and I becomes even smarter because he's listening to 2 people instead of 1, and they go away much more enriched. This
David
is beautiful.
1 plus David 2 equals what?
Well, sometimes half a David, I think, but well, let's hope it's more than 1.
Well, and we know for a fact that you bring that average up. So I
try, but here's the thing: locked inside their own head, everything is perfect. Everything is really smart because we're the
everything is perfect inside.
Well, yeah, because if we're the judges of our own ability to think things up, well, we can't be objective. So, it's our own idea. We get excited. If we get excited, energetically, our brain gives us a dopamine spike. So we feel happy about it. And we think, oh, this is amazing. When we bring it out, however, and we discuss it as we do now, that's when we actually see the value of it. You may help me, for instance, to see the value of my thought because it really fires you up and you give me something else back. So my thought becomes a springboard for your thought, which then enables me to think even better. You may say, hey, David, this is rubbish you came out with. I'm going to think, okay, why is it rubbish? But then discussing it, we begin to see the value of a different perspective, and that enriches both of us. So, this connection is fantastic. It allows us to become so much better and so much deeper in our thinking that, without it, we'd be lost.
Wow. And go back since the beginning of time. We've got to be able to communicate with one another. If we can't communicate, the message, however it might be, through the written word, through the video, however it might be. Oh, podcast. Someone suggested I do a podcast. Do you do a podcast?
I do sometimes, occasionally. I'm not as regular as I should be
The
because
reason I've kind of laughed when I hear that question when somebody says, "Well, David, why aren't you podcast?" David, me, why aren't you podcasting? And I said, I don't have time to do something. I want to. What I am doing right now, I want to do the best I possibly can. I don't want to. So I said,
well, I think yeah, go on.
here's my recommendation. Get to one of my videos, close your eyes, and there's your podcast, man. Your podcast.
Well, there you go. See, that's simple and beautiful and actually works. And I think also, you know, you said something really important. You said you don't have a lot of time, which is, you know, it's true.
Same 24 hours that you have, though.
Well, well, none of us have enough time to do what we want. So then we have to prioritize. And when we create those priorities for ourselves, inevitably our own values begin to surface. Our own sense of who we are begins to come in. So, you know, if you say, well, you know, how do you prioritize? Well, you said, you know, I work on videos and I work perhaps on text sometimes. And that's what I do because that's really important. And you got to say, well, why is it important? It's been important because your message actually matters. Businesses need that advice. And if you have to have a podcast because, well, you know, you may think, well, isn't that a cool thing to do? Well, that takes you away from that. So then, you know, it means that it's not as important to you. And other things become important, like having 3 channels instead of 2, for instance. So you see how
you brought up a sore point. I've got 3 YouTube channels. One, I don't know how I got there, and I would like to only have one. But the one that I have, interesting. I don't publish publicly on that one. All I use that one for is to go into the studio to record.
Right. Well, there you go. See, but all these things, you know, the way we prioritize always is basically indicative of what we value, and what we value ourselves, what we actually put in first, second, third, determines then the order of in which we throw our energy behind the things we do.
Okay, David, you and I could. Well, this isn't going to be the last time we talk.
No, it's not. I'm sure about that. Yes, absolutely.
We go on. We do some good brainstorming. I think we do some really good brainstorming.
There's good complementarity, I must say.
My special gift to you, and I'm saying this with all sincerity. I mentioned that you are a master of putting the ideas on paper so that somebody reads them. I enjoy doing videos. That's how I want to communicate the message. In the last, well, at the beginning of 2020, I started developing a concept for myself, and it's worked extremely well for me. And so I want to take it to its next step, and that is to show other people how to do what I'm doing, which is simple. You can do it, and it's working for me. Why shouldn't it work for you? Okay. I have developed what I call web landing pages. You know that because I think you're probably on every web landing page I have. I would venture, well, you're pretty close on all of them, but I want to create a special page. So at 2 o'clock this morning, I got an epiphany, and I woke up and I went to GoDaddy and I bought intentional.com. Can you believe I bought intentional.com? And you know what I paid for it? Wait till David hears I paid $1.99 for it.
Oh wow, that is really
well,
really cool.
I bought it really, David, to protect you because I don't want someone to take my idea and work it against you. So you now have control. We have co-control of a domain called intentional.com.
That's amazing, actually.
It really is. It really is because the oneword.coms, you know, that's been the explosion.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So on that page, I've already envisioned. I'm gonna do all the work to produce the page. All you have to do, all I'm going to ask you to do, you don't have to do it if you don't want. All I'm going to ask you to do is to give me the links to 2 5-minute videos a week.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, one video will be specifically
Intentional, yeah.
professional
Yep.
as you're doing on LinkedIn. So
Yep.
you can even take, you can double use it, take your best LinkedIn and do it. And we'll put it on this web
Okay.
landing page.
Okay.
And the other thing, I would like you to do a 5-minute eye of your mind
Okay.
video.
Yeah.
And you send me the links and boom, that you're done. I will not publish anything without your approval, but it's going to be very simple, very simple. We will direct folks to where they can buy your books. Any videos that you have done that you want published to direct people to, we will put it on that page. So we'll work it out, but it's just going to be a pure information. I'm out. I'm out right now telling the rest of the world how I think they should be using a page like this. So it's my honor that you are my very first person.
Thank you very much for thinking of it. Actually, I'm touched. I really
Well,
am.
you're perfect for it. You're absolutely perfect for it. Actually, the lead video will be the one that we are doing right now.
Okay.
We can change it if we want to change it. We can
No,
change.
this is good. This is actually cool.
And,
It's been a cool discussion. I've been
well,
honored.
I've enjoyed, as always. There's no way I can't have an hour with David Amerland, looking at the eye of his mind, trying to figure out how things work. But it's wonderful where you are right now in your writing, because I am plugging into everything, and it's really neat. And thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Thank you.